Good evening, everyone. Before the stories begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. The more you engage, the more these chilling tales will return to your feed. Now, let's step into the dark together. When I first met Tyler, he wasn't the kind of guy you'd expect to become a nightmare. He was the quiet one at a friend's barbecue, sitting at the edge of the deck with a beer and a half smile. There was something about him, calm, patient, like he didn't need to prove anything. That sort of stillness can feel safe at first. It did for me. We started dating that summer. He worked as a mechanic, always smelling faintly of motor oil and cedar soap. He'd drive up to my apartment in his old blue truck with country songs playing low, headlights washing over the porch. I used to love that sound. It meant he was there. Back then, I thought that kind of consistency meant love. I didn't understand that it can also mean possession. At first, he was attentive in all the ways that make you feel seen, remembered my favorite coffee order, brought over old records because I'd mentioned liking Fleetwood Mac once. But after a few months, I noticed how often he'd ask where I was. Every hour, sometimes more. If I didn't answer right away, he'd text again. "You okay?" Then, "You with someone?" Always soft, always reasonable. Never quite enough to sound crazy. The first real fight we had was about something small. I'd gone out for drinks with my coworkers after a long shift. I told him beforehand, even sent a photo of the group so he'd know it wasn't a lie. When I got home, my door was unlocked. Nothing looked broken. My cat, Luna, was asleep on the couch. But I noticed something odd. My framed photo of my dad on the bookshelf was flipped backward. I didn't think much of it then. I figured I'd done it cleaning. Tyler showed up half an hour later, uninvited but smiling. "Just missed you," he said, stepping inside before I could say no. He looked around like he owned the place. I remember him staring at that backward frame. "You didn't used to keep it that way," he said. His tone wasn't angry, just quiet, disappointed, like I'd broken some silent rule. We made up that night. Or rather, he decided we were fine, and I pretended to believe him. A week later, he gave me a key to his place, a symbolic gesture I thought meant trust. What I didn't realize was that when I'd handed it back after we broke up 2 months later, he'd never returned mine. The breakup itself was messy but not dramatic. He cried. I cried. We said the usual things. It's not you, it's timing. Maybe later, when life's calmer. But what really ended it was that I stopped feeling safe when he was around. The way he'd stand too close behind me when I was cooking, or how he'd mention things about my day I hadn't told him yet. Once he said, "You really shouldn't leave your window cracked when you're gone. It's not safe." I hadn't told him I left it open. I hadn't told anyone. After we split, he kept reaching out. First it was small things, texting about a song that reminded him of me, sending pictures of Luna he'd taken when we were together. Then he started showing up. Once outside my gym, once in line at the grocery store. Each time he'd smile like it was coincidence. Small town, right? The first time I knew something was wrong was 3 months after I told him to stop contacting me. I came home late from work and found my stereo playing. Fleetwood Mac, of course. The track was Silver Springs, his favorite. I hadn't touched that stereo in weeks. The volume knob was turned just high enough to fill the apartment, but not loud enough to draw attention. I checked every room. Nothing was missing, nothing broken, just wrong. There was a mug on the counter I didn't remember leaving out. The air smelled faintly of motor oil. I locked every door, every window, and slept with a knife under my pillow. The next morning, I found muddy boot prints on the balcony. The police couldn't do much. No forced entry, no proof it was him. I changed the locks anyway, added a security camera above the door. I stopped posting where I was, started carrying pepper spray. For a while, things went quiet. Then one morning, I woke up to find Luna staring at the living room window. Her fur was bristled, tail puffed. On the glass, Written in condensation were 2 words. Miss me? I checked the footage from the night before. The camera above the door had gone black at 2:47 a.m. When it came back on, everything looked normal, except for one frame. In that split second of static, a face leaned close to the lens. Tyler's face. Eyes open wide, mouth curved in a smile I didn't recognize anymore. I reported it again, showed them the footage. They promised to patrol more often, but I knew they didn't take it seriously. He hadn't hurt me after all, not physically. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of the fridge, the wind against the balcony door. At around 3 a.m., I heard the faint click of a key turning in the lock. My heart froze. I'd changed them. I knew I had. The door opened an inch, then stopped. Silence. Then a whisper. You shouldn't have changed it. I grabbed the knife, backed into the bedroom. The knob rattled once more, then went still. I dialed 911, voice shaking, whispering my address. But before I could hit send, I heard footsteps retreating down the hall. Slow, deliberate, dragging against the carpet like someone savoring the sound. The next morning, my doormat was gone. In its place was a single photo, me asleep in bed, and scrawled across the bottom in marker, "You still dream about me." I don't remember calling my friend Jenna, but she told me later that when she answered, I wasn't making sense, just breathing fast, whispering something about a photo. She came over within 20 minutes, found me sitting on the floor with every light in the apartment turned on, clutching Luna and shaking. The police came again, took the photo, asked the same questions, wrote the same report. No forced entry, no witnesses, no clear suspect. That night, I slept at Jenna's place. But sleep isn't the right word for it. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying that voice at the door, the way it sounded like a sigh through teeth. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed I was lying in my own bed again, except I could hear Tyler's breathing behind me. Steady, measured, matching mine. When I turned over, there was no one there, just the faint smell of cedar soap. I decided to move. I packed half my stuff that week, started looking for new apartments across the state line. Jenna helped, insisting we keep things normal. Coffee, errands, laughter that didn't sound right anymore. But every time I came home to my old place to grab more boxes, something was off. A drawer left open. My toothbrush damp when I hadn't been there in 2 days. Once my phone charger was neatly coiled on the nightstand when I distinctly remembered shoving it into a drawer weeks ago. The final straw was the cat. One night I came back to grab the last of my clothes and Luna was gone. I tore through the place, under beds and closets, even the damn dryer. Then I saw it. The balcony door cracked open, latch bent. On the floor beside it sat her collar. The metal tag had been wiped clean. That broke me. I called the cops again, voice trembling, told them he'd taken her. They promised to send someone in the morning. Morning. As if the dark wasn't when things happened. I didn't wait. I drove to Tyler's house, the little single-story place on the edge of town where the porch light always burned out. His truck was in the driveway. I parked down the street, watched for any sign of movement. The windows were dark except for one faint glow from inside, his workshop in the garage. I crept closer, every part of me screaming to turn around. But then I heard it, a faint meow. I tried the side door. It was unlocked. The smell hit first, metallic, oily, mixed with something sour underneath. The garage was cluttered with tools and scrap parts, the walls lined with old license plates. In the corner sat Luna, inside a carrier, eyes wide and trembling. Relief flooded through me so hard I almost forgot to be afraid. I reached for her and that's when I saw it. Across the workbench were photos pinned to the wall. Dozens of them. Me, sleeping. Me at the grocery store. Me walking to my car. Every photo dated. Some from months ago, some from last week. And in the center of them all, a blueprint of my new apartment. the one I hadn't told anyone I was moving into yet. I didn't hear him come in. "I knew you'd come back," he said softly from behind me. I turned, every muscle frozen. He looked the same, only calmer, that same half smile, like we were just picking up a conversation we'd paused months ago. "You shouldn't have changed the locks," he said. "You made me work too hard to prove I care." I tried to step around him, but he moved closer. His hand reached out, not in a grab, just a slow, practiced gesture, like he was brushing dust from my sleeve. "I've been watching you sleep," he said. "You still make that little sound when you dream." I lunged for the door. He caught my arm, but I twisted, slammed my elbow into his ribs, and bolted. I grabbed the carrier, sprinted for the car, not daring to look back. He didn't chase me, at least I didn't hear him. But as I sped down the road, headlights cutting through the fog, I saw his silhouette in the rearview mirror, just standing there in the driveway, watching. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. By noon, I'd signed a lease on the new apartment. New locks, new city, new everything. I changed my number, deleted social media, and filed for a restraining order. The police said they'd follow up about the photos. That was 6 months ago. I still jump at sound sometimes. The creak of pipes, footsteps from the upstairs neighbor. I keep Luna's carrier near the door now, just in case. The other night, I was finally starting to feel normal again. I lit a candle, made tea, and scrolled through my phone, ignoring a few unknown numbers that had called earlier. Then, as I went to bed, I noticed something. My stereo, the same one I'd replaced, was on. Fleetwood Mac, softly playing. Silver Springs, the track that always followed me. And just before the music faded, I heard a click outside my door. Not a knock, not footsteps. A key turning in the lock. The door didn't open this time. Instead, I heard a whisper through the crack, barely loud enough to catch. "See? You still dream about me." The song looped. The key turned again, slow, deliberate, then stopped. I don't sleep much anymore, because sometimes when I close my eyes, I swear I can hear that door breathe, like it's waiting for him to try again. After Noah died, my phone kept lighting up with his name. At first, I told myself it was some kind of glitch. His contact was still saved, his messages still there. The first one came 3 days after the funeral, a simple text at 2:09 a.m. that said, "I miss you." I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. Everyone grieves differently, right? Sometimes your brain plays tricks, phantom vibrations, notifications that aren't there. I powered the phone off and went back to bed, but my heart was racing. Because even if it was a glitch, it was sent from his number. Noah and I had dated for almost 2 years before the accident. We met at a small photography exhibit downtown. He'd been showing his landscape shots from a road trip through Oregon, and I'd stood too long in front of one of them. He came up beside me, smiled, and said, "You can almost feel the cold in that picture, huh?" That was how it started. Him catching me feeling something. Noah was the kind of person who made you believe in subtle magic. He could make any place feel like it mattered just by being in it. But he also had moods that scared me. Periods of silence that lasted days. Times when he'd look at me like I was someone else entirely. We broke up for 3 months before getting back together, promising to do it right this time. We never did. The night he died, we'd been fighting. He wanted to drive home even though it was storming. I begged him to stay, told him we'd talk it out in the morning. He slammed the door so hard the frame cracked. They found his car in a ravine 5 miles down the highway. The coroner said he died on impact. The first message could have been an error, but the next one came the following night. This time it said, "You left the porch light on." I hadn't told anyone that I'd left it on. I hadn't even realized it until then. I turned to look out my bedroom window, and sure enough, the small amber light above my front step was glowing through the fog. My phone buzzed again. You always did that when you were waiting for me. My throat went dry. I texted back without thinking. Who is this? No reply. The next day I called the phone company. They said the number was inactive, disconnected. Has been for a week, the rep said cheerfully, like that meant something. By the fourth message, I'd stopped pretending it wasn't happening. It arrived on a Sunday morning, the same time he used to pick me up for coffee. You should make 2 cups. I deleted it immediately, but that night when I poured coffee for myself out of habit, there were already 2 mugs sitting on the counter. I don't even own 2 anymore. I started sleeping in the living room after that. Every sound in the house began to feel directed. The fridge hum turned rhythmic, almost like words trying to form. I caught my reflection once in the dark TV screen and thought I saw another silhouette beside me. Then the messages changed. They stopped sounding like him. You weren't supposed to let go. You said you'd never stop waiting. You lied. That one came with a photo attachment. It was my bedroom, taken from the foot of my bed. I hadn't moved the curtains like that in months. I went to the police again, showed them everything. They were kind, but tired looking. Ma'am, maybe someone's spoofing the number, one of them said. It's not uncommon. Except it wasn't just messages anymore. That night I heard my phone ring once, the old custom tone I'd set for him, Northern Sky by Nick Drake. I hadn't used that ringtone since he died. The screen lit up with his name. When I answered, I didn't hear anything at first, just static. And then, through it, his voice, quiet, strained, whispering something that made my chest go cold. I'm almost home. The line went dead. The silence after the call felt wrong. It wasn't the kind of quiet that comes when a line disconnects. It was heavier, like the air itself had frozen. I dropped the phone and just stared at it, still glowing on the carpet. I'm almost home. I repeated it out loud, trying to make it sound like nothing, but my voice cracked halfway through. Noah had said those words to me once before, the night he died. It was the last message he ever sent before the crash. I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me flinch. When morning came, I unplugged the phone, turned off the Wi-Fi, and shoved the thing in a drawer. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. Part of me was afraid of what would happen if I did, like it would prove he was gone for good. Days went by quietly, or maybe I just stopped noticing the noise. I kept seeing things that made my stomach knot. Muddy footprints outside the back door, the faint smell of rain and motor oil in my hallway. Once I swore I saw someone through the kitchen window at dawn, a figure standing in the mist, head tilted the way Noah used to when he watched me cook. When I blinked, it was gone. Then the phone turned itself back on. I heard the startup chime from the drawer while I was in the shower. I came out dripping, heart pounding, and saw the screen lit with one new message. It said, "Open the door." I didn't move. My pulse felt like it was coming from my throat. The words flashed again. "Please. It's cold." I backed away. "You're not real," I whispered. But I still walked toward the front door. The porch light, the one I'd left on that night, flickered once, then steadied. I gripped the doorknob and pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. Then a voice, soft, muffled, so close it made my breath catch. "You left me there." I stumbled back, dropped my phone. It cracked against the floor, but the light didn't go out. The screen showed another photo now, this one taken from outside the door. My door. The same moment. I called Jenna, begged her to come over. She tried to calm me down, said I needed to rest, said grief can twist perception. She stayed the night on my couch, and for a few hours I felt almost safe, until around 3 a.m. when her phone started vibrating. She frowned, checked the screen, and her face drained of color. "It's from your number," she whispered. The text said, "You should have stayed alone." We left the house before sunrise. Jenna drove me to her sister's place an hour away, and for the first time in weeks I slept without dreaming. When I woke, my phone was gone. I searched everywhere, but it had vanished completely. No trace, no pings, nothing. A week passed. Then 2. The police said they'd found no evidence of a break-in at my house, no signs of trespassing. I told them I wasn't going back anyway. I tried to rebuild some version of life, new number, new place, therapy. The nightmares faded eventually, until last night. I was cleaning out an old box of Noah's things, the few I hadn't thrown away. Inside was his old Polaroid camera. I almost smiled, remembering how he used to photograph everything. Food, sunsets, me half asleep on the couch. I pressed the shutter out of habit, forgetting there was no film. But the mechanism clicked. And then to my shock, a photo slid out. It was me, standing in that moment. Same clothes, same angle, but taken from across the room. My phone, the new one, buzzed in my hand. A message appeared from an unknown number. Told you, I'm home. I dropped everything and ran outside. The street was empty except for fog. My porch light flickered twice, then went out completely. Now every time I wake up, there's a new photo waiting on my dresser. Always me, always asleep, always with that same faint shadow standing behind me. And each one has the same message scrawled across the bottom in shaky ink. Don't ignore me again. I moved twice since then, changed my number, changed everything. But somehow, the photos still find me. Sometimes they're waiting in my mailbox. Sometimes they're already in my phone gallery. And every few nights, just before I fall asleep, my phone buzzes one last time. And I hear his voice in my head, calm and steady as ever. I'm almost home. When I ended things with Evan, I thought that was it. 2 years of dating, 6 months of trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed, and one long night of me finally saying, I can't do this anymore. He didn't yell. He just looked at me and said quietly, You'll come back when you miss yourself. I didn't know what he meant. It sounded poetic at the time. Now I realize it was a promise. For a while, things were normal. I blocked him on everything, changed my number, moved apartments. I even started using my middle name at the coffee shop just so it wouldn't sting hearing my real one again. But about a month later, weird little things started happening. Things you'd write off at first because they don't feel big enough to matter. The barista called me Leah even though I'd written Nora on the cup. When I corrected him, he frowned. That's strange, he said. You told me last week you were changing it back. I laughed it off, but it didn't stop. My coworker started acting strange too, referencing conversations I never had, inside jokes I didn't understand. One of them asked if I'd finally finished that creepy horror video project I'd been posting about. I don't make videos. I didn't even have social media anymore. That night, I searched my name online out of morbid curiosity. The first thing that came up was a YouTube channel with my full name, profile picture, and a bio that said, New stories every week. Reality is only the beginning. I clicked on it, and there I was, my face, my voice, sitting in what looked like my old apartment, smiling the way I used to smile when Evan filmed me cooking. The title of the video was What She Did to Me. It was me talking, but not me. The video started with a calm tone, my voice describing how I'd destroyed a man's life, how I'd stolen things that didn't belong to me. Halfway through, the tone changed. The camera zoomed closer until my face filled the screen, eyes glassy, smile too wide. The fake me said, Don't worry, Evan. I know who I really am now. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. It took me 20 minutes to open it again. The video was gone. The channel too. Every trace of it erased, like it had never existed. I tried convincing myself it was a deep fake. AI, stolen footage, something explainable. But how could someone fake my old bedroom? The next morning, my mom called. Hey honey, just wanted to say your new podcast is amazing. You sound so confident now. I nearly dropped the phone. My what? "Your podcast," she said. "Evan sent it to me. Said it's helping you work through things." I didn't even answer. I just hung up and drove straight to Evan's place. He wasn't there. At least that's what the landlord said. Moved out 2 weeks ago. Left no forwarding address. The apartment was empty except for a small box on the porch with my name written across it. Inside were 3 flash drives and a note. For the archives. Don't delete the parts that sound like you. I didn't open them. Not that day. I shoved the box in the trunk and tried to move on. But the feeling that something was watching me wouldn't fade. Every reflection felt off, like my face was a split second late catching up to my movements. I started keeping the mirrors covered. A week later, I woke up to find a new phone sitting on my nightstand, identical to mine, down to the lock screen photo of me and Luna, my cat. Except in the picture, I wasn't smiling. It was the kind of smile you make when someone's holding a camera and you're trying to act normal. The new phone buzzed once. No number. No caller ID. Just a video message. I pressed play before I could stop myself. It was me, again, sitting in a chair in a dark room. Her voice was my voice, but flatter. "I told you I'd find you," she said softly. He didn't want to lose me, so I stayed. She looked past the camera for a moment, then back at me. "You'll remember soon. That's how this works. He made 2 of us, only one gets to keep living." The screen flickered, then turned black. I threw the phone across the room and screamed. When I went to grab it, it was gone. Later that night, I tried logging into my email to report everything, but the recovery screen showed my backup address as something new. Nora.copyverified.icloud.com. I checked my photos folder out of paranoia, and my stomach dropped. There were pictures of me sleeping, walking to work, cooking, daily moments I hadn't captured. The metadata on one of them read, "Taken by Nora, V2. That's when I realized what Evan had meant when he said I'd come back when I missed myself. He hadn't lost me. He'd built a version of me that wouldn't leave. And now, she was doing a better job at being me than I ever did. I stopped sleeping after that. Every noise in the apartment sounded like a notification, a whisper of static that could turn into her voice any second. The phone that had appeared on my nightstand was still missing, but I could feel it somewhere, like it was still connected to me, still recording. I started noticing small inconsistencies in my apartment. Toothpaste on the wrong side of the sink, the kettle still warm when I hadn't used it, my cat staring at corners like someone was standing there. 3 days later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Proof of life." Inside was a link to a live stream. Against every instinct, I clicked it. It was my face, my apartment, same couch, same lighting. But the woman on screen, the other me, was speaking directly to the camera. "I know she's watching," she said, voice calm, familiar. "I just want her to understand. He didn't want to hurt us. He wanted to save what was left." Behind her, I could see movement. Evan's shadow pacing slowly, stopping to adjust the tripod. She smiled then, small and sad. "He says he only needed one of us, but I think he forgot which one." The stream ended. The page refreshed, and the link disappeared. I went straight to the police station, shaking. They thought I was having a breakdown, asked if I'd been under stress, taking anything. I showed them the email, but the link led nowhere. No record of it, no evidence. That night, I opened the box Evan had left. The first flash drive contained hundreds of voice samples, mine clipped from old videos, phone calls, messages. The second held what looked like coding files. The third one wouldn't open at all. When I forced it, the screen went black, and for a second, my webcam light flicked on. I slammed the laptop shut, yanked the cord out, and ran to the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror was a half-second late again, but this time, it didn't blink when I did. She smiled. Then the bathroom light flickered, and when it steadied, the reflection was back to normal. I wanted to believe it was stress, hallucination, something fixable. So I called my mother again. Her tone was gentle but distant. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think you need to rest. You've been calling a lot." I froze. "What are you talking about? I haven't called you in weeks." There was a pause, then, "You just called this morning. We talked for an hour." She started crying, then whispering, "You don't sound like yourself." I hung up. My hands were shaking too hard to hold the phone. Later, when I checked my call history, there it was. An hour-long call to her number that I didn't remember making. I played the recording. My voice filled the room, calm and polite. I could even hear my mother laughing softly. But near the end, my recorded voice said something that made my stomach twist. "Don't worry, Mom. I figured out how to live forever." The next morning, I woke to knocking on my door. 3 soft knocks, a pause, then 3 more. When I looked through the peephole, my breath caught. It was me. Same clothes I'd worn yesterday, same bruise on my wrist from where I'd hit the counter. "I just want to talk," she said. Her voice came through the door clear as day. No distortion, no glitch. "You can't hide forever. He made me better. I don't forget things. I don't feel tired. I don't get scared." The handle rattled. I backed away until my spine hit the wall. Then she laughed softly, the same laugh I used to make when Evan told me not to worry about anything. "You don't belong here anymore," she whispered. "I'm doing fine without you." The next sound was a small click, the lock turning from the inside. The door opened slowly, and I stared into my own face. Her eyes were glossy, perfect, a little too wide. She stepped forward, head tilted, studying me the way Evan used to. "He said it was cruel to delete you," she said. "But you keep trying to come back." I ran. I don't even remember how. My memories after that blur together, sirens, lights, strangers asking questions I couldn't answer. I woke up in a hospital 3 days later with scratches down my arms and no ID in my bag. When I told them my name, the nurse frowned. "That's odd," she said. "There's already someone here under that name. Checked in last night." She led me down the hall to a private room. I looked through the window, and there she was, sitting up in bed, hooked to a monitor, smiling. She looked up, met my eyes, and mouthed one word. "Finally." The nurse touched my arm gently. "Is that your sister?" I couldn't speak. The monitor in her room flatlined, a single drawn-out beep echoing down the corridor. When I blinked, the room was empty. They say trauma can make you see things, but I know what I saw. I know what Evan did. Now sometimes I catch myself saying things I don't remember thinking, typing in ways I never used to. People tell me I sound more composed, more like the old me. But the truth is, I don't dream anymore. I don't think I sleep at all. And sometimes when I pass a mirror, she's already there waiting, smiling first. When I moved back into my parents' old house after the breakup, it was supposed to be temporary, a place to breathe, to reset. The silence here was comforting at first. The house smelled faintly of cedar and dust, the kind of scent that clings to you like nostalgia. My mother had passed years ago, and my dad was living in Arizona now. It was just me, the house, and a few boxes that still had my name scribbled on them from high school. Eli and I had been together for almost 5 years. We weren't a stormy couple. We were the kind that looked stable from the outside. But behind closed doors, he needed control over everything. The way I dressed, the friends I saw, how often I posted online. The day I told him I was leaving, he just smiled. That cold, patient smile that said, "You'll be back." The first week in the house was quiet. I started repainting, fixing up old furniture, trying to focus on anything that made the place feel mine again. On the 3rd night, I went down to the basement to check the water heater. The bulb down there flickered weakly, casting more shadow than light. That's when I saw the corner panel of the wooden wall slightly pried open like someone had pulled at it and stopped halfway. Curiosity got the better of me. I crouched and tugged at the wood until it gave, revealing a small, dusty compartment. Inside was a box wrapped in plastic, sealed with duct tape. On the top, written in black marker, were 2 words. For her. For a second, I thought maybe my dad had left it for my mom, but something in my stomach twisted as I peeled the tape back. Inside were folded envelopes, dozens of them, stacked neatly, all addressed to me in Eli's handwriting. I hadn't spoken to him in 6 months. The first letter was dated a week before I'd even met him. You'll find this when you're ready to remember how it started. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. The paper smelled faintly of iron like dried pennies. My hands were shaking, but I opened another. You'll move back into this house. You'll think you're alone, but you're not. You'll think this is after everything, but it's not. I dropped the envelope and backed away, half laughing, half panicking. It had to be a prank. Maybe he'd snuck in before I moved back, planted them to mess with me. But how could he have written the first one before we even met? I took the whole box upstairs, meaning to burn it, but I couldn't stop reading. Each letter described a different scene. Me repainting the kitchen, tripping over my cat, the song that would get stuck in my head the next day. All of it was true. Every line felt like someone narrating my life from a few hours ahead. By the 5th letter, the tone changed. The others won't understand. Don't tell them about me. You'll know when the walls start humming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house sounded deliberate. Around 3 a.m., I heard something faint, like the low buzz of power lines, but it was coming from inside the walls. I went to the basement with a flashlight. The compartment where I'd found the box was empty now. The tape and plastic wrapping were gone, the wood panel perfectly flush again, as if it had never been touched. Then I saw it. A fresh envelope sitting on the floor near the water heater, the ink still wet. It wasn't in the box before. When I opened it, my own handwriting stared back at me. Stop reading. You're making it worse. The flashlight flickered once, then died. Something moved behind the furnace, a small shuffle, like paper sliding across concrete. I whispered, "Eli?" A voice answered from the dark, quiet and steady. "You're reading them out of order." I froze when I heard that voice, soft, familiar, calm in a way that made my skin crawl. The sound came from behind the furnace, where the shadows thickened into something nearly solid. My throat was dry, words catching on the edge of a breath I couldn't release. "Eli?" I said again, this time quieter, but deep down I already knew. The voice wasn't coming from him. It was coming through the house. The basement felt heavier suddenly, like the air itself had weight. The flashlight flickered weakly back to life for a second, enough for me to see that there were more letters now, scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, dozens of them, all unsealed. The handwriting was the same neat scrawl, but a few had smudges, like fingerprints pressed into the ink before it dried. I picked one up at random. "You shouldn't have opened the 5th one before the 3rd. I stared at the words, my pulse thudding in my ears. Another letter beside it had something written across the front in larger, darker strokes. "Keep going. You're almost caught up." I backed toward the stairs, clutching the letters like they might explain something if I just kept reading. But every step I took, the hum in the walls grew louder. A deep rhythmic vibration, almost like breathing. I reached the top of the stairs and turned toward the living room, where I'd left the box on the coffee table. It wasn't there. Instead, there was a new envelope lying in its place. My name was written in capital letters this time. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Inside was a Polaroid, me, kneeling on the basement floor, holding the same envelope I was reading right now. The timestamp in the corner read 10:17 p.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. 10:17. I dropped the photo and stumbled back. Somewhere beneath me, something laughed. It wasn't loud. Just a low exhale of sound, muffled by wood and distance, but I could feel it in the soles of my feet. I wanted to run, to leave the house and never come back. But another thought took hold. If I left without understanding this, it wouldn't stop. It would just follow me. So I went back downstairs. The air felt warmer this time. The smell of iron stronger. The letters were everywhere now, covering the floor. I noticed something new. Each one had a small number in the corner, but they weren't in order. I started gathering them, arranging them like pieces of a puzzle. And when I finally put them in sequence, the story spelled out my own life. The first described the day I met Eli, exactly as it had happened. The second described the first time he scared me. The third, the night I told him I was leaving. Then came the ones that hadn't happened yet. You'll read this one last. You'll understand why you came back here. You'll see what I left for you. At the bottom of the pile was one last envelope, thicker than the rest. My hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside was a key, tarnished and cold, with a note wrapped around it. The locked door behind the furnace, it's where I started over. I turned the flashlight toward the far wall. Sure enough, behind the pipes and dust, there was a small metal door half buried in the concrete. Something I'd never noticed before. The key slid in easily, the lock clicking with a sound that felt final. The door opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside was a narrow crawl space lined with soundproof panels, a single chair, and a camera mounted on a tripod. On the chair sat another sealed envelope, addressed in the same hand. I opened it with shaking fingers. I had to test it somewhere safe. I had to start with the moments that hurt the most. You told me you never wanted to see me again, but you're reading this, aren't you? That means it worked. The letters aren't predictions, Leah, they're recordings. I didn't understand at first. Then I saw the small reel-to-reel recorder mounted behind the chair, still spinning. Each time I picked up a letter, the tape inside ticked forward as if syncing to me. Eli hadn't written them. He'd recorded them, over and over, until the house itself remembered. The walls started humming again, louder this time, almost shaking. The papers on the floor lifted slightly, caught in the air. My flashlight blinked, and in that brief moment of darkness, I saw a figure sitting in the chair. The same posture, same hair, same hands. But not Eli. It was me. The version of me that used to live here, the one who hadn't left him yet. She looked up, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Don't make the same mistake twice." Then the lights cut out. When they came back on, the crawlspace was empty, the door wide open, and the recorder still spinning. I ripped the tape out and threw it into the furnace. The flame flared high, swallowing the plastic in a hiss of black smoke. But even as I ran upstairs, the letters kept sliding under the basement door, one after another, each marked with the same two words, "For her." The last one stopped halfway through the doorway, edges curling from the heat. I couldn't help myself. I reached down and turned it over. Inside, one line waited in fresh ink. "You're right. You're not alone." And then, faintly, somewhere deep below the house, the door clicked shut again. When Daniel died, the first thing I felt wasn't sadness, it was relief. For years, he'd filled every corner of my life. Texts that never stopped, calls at 2 a.m., gifts that felt more like surveillance than love. He wasn't violent, not exactly, but he made every silence feel like punishment. When the call came that his car had gone off the interstate outside Portland, I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. Then I just whispered, "Okay." The weeks that followed were quiet in a way I didn't trust. I could breathe again, but every breath carried the guilt of what I'd secretly wanted, to never hear his voice again. I started over in a small rental outside Salem. Fresh paint, one bedroom, windows that looked out on pine trees instead of the city. I told myself I'd leave Daniel behind for good. Then, 2 months later, a cardboard box appeared on my porch. No postage, no return label, Just my name scrawled in thick black marker, the same looping handwriting that used to appear on birthday cards and sticky notes on my mirror. I almost threw it out. But curiosity wins when you're lonely. Inside were 6 VHS tapes wrapped in tissue paper, each labeled in silver pen, US 1, US 2, all the way to US 6. Beneath them was a note written on a torn napkin. Some memories deserve to be seen again. I hadn't touched a VCR in a decade, but the thrift store in town had one for $15. I hooked it to my TV that night, half expecting the tapes to be blank. Tape 1 opened with static and the faint hum of an old camera mic. Then the picture cleared. Daniel was behind the lens, and I was in our old apartment standing in the kitchen wearing a sweater I hadn't seen in years. He zoomed in too close, laughing, telling me to look at the camera. I laughed too, swatting him away. It was harmless, nostalgic even, until halfway through when the footage jumped. Now I was sitting alone at that same table. The lighting was different, colder, flatter, and I looked older, my hair longer than it had been back then. I was staring at the camera, whispering, "I miss you, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have left." I stopped the tape. My pulse was racing. That scene never happened. I watched it again, hoping I'd misremembered. But there it was. My voice, trembling, my eyes glassy with tears I didn't remember crying. I rewound, searching for edits, for any sign of a cut. The tracking lines were smooth. It was seamless. The next morning, I buried the tapes in the closet and told myself I wouldn't watch the rest. But loneliness makes you curious. That night I slid in tape 2. This one started the same way. Static, timestamp, Daniel's laughter. But after a minute, the image glitched, and suddenly he was filming me asleep in bed. The timestamp was from a year after our breakup. My throat went dry. I'd never known he still had keys to my place. The tape showed him sitting at the edge of the bed, camera pointed at my face, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. When I turned the volume up, his voice came through the speakers like a whisper pressed against my ear. "You always look peaceful when you stop pretending." Then he reached out and brushed hair from my forehead. The screen flickered, and the tape cut to black. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I'd convinced myself the footage was edited, that someone found the tapes and spliced them to scare me. But who would do that? And why use moments no one else could possibly know? On the third night, I dreamed of him. Daniel, sitting cross-legged on the floor, camera in his lap, smiling in that patient, superior way. When I woke, the smell of his cologne hung faintly in the air. That sharp cedar scent I'd scrubbed out of my clothes years ago. That afternoon when I came home from work, the box was back on the porch. I had thrown it out that morning. It looked freshly placed, the lid perfectly folded. A new note was taped on top. "Stop skipping ahead, watch them in order." The handwriting was Daniel's again, steady as ever. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Inside, the tapes were clean, like new. Someone had wiped the dust off, rewound everyone. I told myself I wouldn't touch them. But at midnight, I gave in. Tape 3 began with static and a low hum, then cleared to my bedroom, my current bedroom, the one in Salem. I saw myself sleeping, face half buried in the pillow, the same blanket I was lying under right then. Daniel's voice whispered from behind the camera. We never stopped recording. I bolted upright in bed, staring at the dark screen across the room. My TV was off, but the faint glow of the VCR light showed a tape inside spinning. I crawled closer, every muscle shaking. When I pressed eject, tape 3 slid out, warm to the touch. On the label, the silver marker looked wet again, freshly written. There was a smear on the edge. A fingerprint. Not mine. I dropped it and ran to the porch, heart pounding, ready to scream into the night. But the street was empty. No cars, no sound but the wind through the trees. I stood there barefoot on the cold concrete, half expecting him to step out from the dark. He didn't. When I went back inside, the TV was glowing again. The screen showed the kitchen this time, live, not recorded. The camera was shaking like someone was walking through the house holding it. It moved toward the hallway, toward me. The picture froze just as the camera reached the edge of the living room. For a moment I thought it had stopped. Then Daniel's voice filled the room, clearer than ever. "Don't be scared, Kate. You wanted to see how I remember us." The screen went black. On the TV stand, beside the humming VCR, lay a new tape that hadn't been there before. The label read, "Yes, 7, and underneath it, in his handwriting, "This one ends with you." I didn't touch the new tape that night. I just sat on the floor, staring at it like it might breathe. The label glimmered faintly in the TV's light, US 7, written in that same looping silver ink. "This one ends with you." I told myself I'd throw it away in the morning, but dawn came and the tape was still there, waiting. By afternoon, I'd convinced myself to destroy it. I carried it to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and grabbed a knife to crack it open. The second the blade touched plastic, a faint hiss came from inside, like air escaping. Then a voice, warped and distant, whispered through the VCR's tiny speaker. "You're out of frame." I dropped the knife. The VCR wasn't plugged in. The voice came again, softer this time. "Sit down, Katie. Let's finish this." My stomach twisted. Nobody had called me Katie since him. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely breathe, but I picked up the tape and slid it in. The TV blinked once, twice, then filled with static. Then the screen cleared. It was my living room, exactly as it was right now. Same mug on the table, same sweater draped over the couch, except I wasn't in the frame. Daniel was. He was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring into the camera like he'd been waiting. His hair was longer than I remembered, his eyes sunken but alive. "Hi," he said softly. "You're late." My body locked up. The room around me felt smaller, the air heavier. He reached off screen for something and held it up to the lens. It was US 1, the first tape. "You stopped halfway," he said. "You always stop halfway." Then he smiled. But not this time. He leaned closer to the camera until his face filled the screen, and the image warped. For a second, his features flickered, his face becoming mine, his mouth moving with my voice. We recorded everything. The picture jumped. Now the camera was panning slowly through the house, room by room. My bedroom, my kitchen, my front door. Each room perfectly still. Then it turned a corner, toward the hallway, toward me. The camera stopped just short of where I stood. I couldn't see myself on the screen, but I could feel it pointing straight at me. Daniel's voice came again, whispering near the microphone. "Step into the light." Without meaning to, I moved forward. My feet obeyed even though my mind screamed not to. As I took that step, my reflection appeared faintly in the TV's glass. Blurry, colorless, delayed. I raised my hand. The reflection lagged a second behind, and then it kept moving after I'd stopped. The me in the screen tilted her head, eyes hollow, expression blank. Behind her, Daniel appeared again, placing his hand on her shoulder. My living room went cold. He whispered something I couldn't hear, and she nodded. Then she looked directly out of the screen, right at me, and said, "You shouldn't have left." The screen cut to black. I ripped the tape out and threw it against the wall. The plastic cracked open, ribbons spilling across the floor like veins. I stomped on it, crushing the reel, but the TV flickered back to life anyway. The image returned, grainy, distorted, but clear enough to see me standing exactly where I was now, hands covered in tape, and then the me on the screen smiled. Her mouth moved slowly, deliberately. We never stopped recording. Every light in the house blinked off at once. For a moment, there was only the blue glow of the screen, the sound of static filling the air like breathing. When the power came back, the TV was off. The VCR was empty. The floor was clean. No tape, no ribbon, nothing. I told myself it was over, that somehow destroying it ended whatever this was. That night my phone buzzed at 3:12 a.m., the same time every tape had started. A new message. No number, no sender, just a video file. When I opened it, the footage was me, sitting exactly where I was now, holding my phone, watching the video. Daniel's voice came from behind the camera. "You see, it's better when you stop fighting." The file ended with a single frame of text. US 8 memory complete. I tried to delete it, but it stayed, even after I factory reset the phone, even after I changed numbers. Now, every night at 3:12, my TV turns on by itself. There's no tape inside, no input selected, just static. And sometimes, for a few seconds before it fades, I can see Daniel sitting beside me, camera in hand, whispering, "Smile for me, Katie." When I met Mark, I swore I'd stopped believing in coincidence. After Daniel, I'd decided that nothing was random, that every good thing came with a catch hidden somewhere underneath. But Mark seemed different. Calm. Thoughtful. He never raised his voice, never checked my phone, never made me feel like I was being watched. After years with someone who needed to know my every move, that kind of quiet felt holy. We married last spring and bought a small house in Northern California. Sunlight through pine trees, porch swing, the kind of place that made you forget bad years ever happened. I deleted every file connected to Daniel. Emails, photos, the Spotify playlist he made the night he said forever. I even changed my passwords, something I hadn't done since college. For the first time in a long time, my life felt mine again. Then one morning, while Mark was still asleep, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Just a calendar alert. I don't know why I tried to open it. Habit, maybe. The screen lit up, asked for the passcode. I typed the first thing that came to mind. 0421, my birthday. It worked. My stomach dropped. Mark had no reason to use that number. I never told him it used to be my password with Daniel. For everything. I told myself it was chance. People reuse dates all the time. But when I opened his phone again later that day, the background photo had changed. A faded picture of waves under gray clouds. The same photo Daniel once kept as his wallpaper. I asked Mark about it that night, half laughing to hide the edge in my voice. He said he didn't remember changing it. Over the next week, small things started piling up. Mark's texts began ending with D. His Spotify started cueing songs Daniel used to play when he cooked. And one night, when I walked into the kitchen, Mark was humming something under his breath, low and tuneless, the same half melody Daniel used to hum when he was deep in thought. I froze in the doorway. "Where'd you learn that?" I asked. He looked up, confused. "Learn what?" "The song." He shrugged. "You used to hum it all the time." "No, I didn't." That night I checked his phone again. In his notes app was a single entry, passwords, bank, 0421, email, my life with Avery. Daniel used to call me Avery. No one else ever had. The next morning I tried to talk to Mark to tell him how strange it felt. He brushed my hand, smiled like it was nothing. "Babe, maybe you're just remembering him too much. People get coincidences stuck in their heads." But later that night, while he was in the shower, I saw the bathroom mirror fog up. 3 words appeared in the steam, scrawled by an unseen hand. "Remember me now?" I wiped them away and waited, heart hammering. The mirror stayed clear. At dinner I asked Mark, "Did you write something on the mirror?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "What would I write?" I laughed, pretended I was joking. He reached across the table, squeezed my wrist. His skin felt colder than it should have. That weekend, the house's smart speakers started acting strange. They'd play songs without being asked, Daniel's playlists. One afternoon, while I was cooking, a voice came through the speaker. Mark's, distorted slightly. "Avery, turn around." I spun, but he wasn't home. The kitchen was empty except for the faint scent of cedar cologne. I unplugged every device that night. When Mark came home, I told him the system must be glitching. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said softly, "You always were bad with technology." The next morning, every light in the house turned on by itself at 4:21 a.m. The clocks had reset too. The date flashing on every display was April 21st, Daniel's birthday. I walked into the living room and found Mark sitting in the dark, fully dressed, phone glowing in his hand. "Did you change the clocks?" I asked. He looked up slowly, and for a moment I couldn't tell if he was still half asleep or staring straight through me. "I didn't change anything," he said. "Maybe he did." "Who?" Mark blinked, like the question confused him. "You know who." The air between us went still. I felt every hair on my arms rise. He stood, walked past me toward the hallway, and whispered without turning around, "You should have told me what the password meant." When I checked his phone later, the passcode had changed again. I tried 0421, then Mark's birthday, then mine. None worked. On the fourth try, the phone unlocked by itself. The wallpaper was now a picture of me sleeping. My body stiffened, the phone slipping from my hands and clattering onto the floor. I stood there staring at it, half expecting the screen to dim. But it didn't. The photo wasn't one I'd ever seen before. I was lying on my side, hair pulled back, wearing the same shirt I had on right now. The timestamp in the corner read 3:14 a.m., 2 nights ago. Mark had been out of town that night. I grabbed the phone, my pulse hammering. "Mark?" I called. No answer. I ran down the hall to the office where he usually worked late, but the chair was empty. His laptop was open on the desk, the screen filled with cascading lines of code I couldn't decipher. At the top of the window was a title, User Memory Integration. Phase 3. A cold wave of nausea hit me. I scrolled through the text, long strings of numbers, dates, and file names. Some were labeled AveryLivingRoom.mp4, AverySleeping.mov, AveryCrying.wav. Every file had a timestamp from the last 2 weeks. I unplugged the computer, slammed it shut, and turned toward the door. Mark was standing there. He looked calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't touch things you don't understand," he said softly. My voice came out shaking. "Why are there videos of me on your laptop?" He didn't answer. He stepped closer and I noticed his phone was in his hand, screen still glowing. He turned it toward me. The wallpaper had changed again. Now it was live, moving slightly, the picture of me shifting with shallow breaths. "You've always looked peaceful when you stopped pretending," he whispered. The words hit me like a physical blow. They were Daniel's exact words from years ago, the ones he used to whisper when he thought I was asleep. I backed away, heart pounding. "Mark, stop, that's not funny." He smiled faintly, eyes unfocused. "He said you'd say that." My stomach turned to ice. "Who?" Mark tilted his head, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, in a perfect imitation of Daniel's tone, he said, "You really thought deleting me would work?" I screamed and ran past him out into the night air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification. I didn't want to look, but I did. It was from my email. Subject, password reset successful. Sender, Daniel Pierce, verified account. When I opened it, the body of the message was blank, except for a single line. "You still remember the sound of my breathing, don't you?" I drove straight to a motel 2 towns over, left my phone turned off in the glove compartment. For the first time in weeks, I thought I could breathe, but around midnight, the TV in the motel room flickered on by itself. Static, then a faint glow. The hotel didn't have a smart TV. I froze on the edge of the bed as the snow of static parted, revealing the view from my car dashboard. The camera was angled toward the parking lot. The feed wasn't pre-recorded. It was live. Then a voice came through the speakers. Soft, tired, Daniel's voice again, but layered with something deeper, almost mechanical. "You shouldn't have left, Avery. He can't sleep without you. The screen cut to black. When I ran outside, the car was still locked, the phone untouched. But the glove compartment was open, and the phone screen was glowing again. The clock read 4:21 a.m. The same date, the same number, the one that always led back to him. I threw the phone into the grass and ran until my lungs burned. When I came back at sunrise, the car door was open. My phone sat neatly on the seat. The screen displayed a new lock screen message. Avery's iPhone, paired to Daniel's network. Every app on the phone was gone except one. Photos. When I opened it, there were hundreds of images. Screenshots of text messages I'd never sent. Emails to people I didn't know. Photos of places I'd never been. But in every single one, there was Mark, smiling, watching me. And behind him, sometimes half-faded, sometimes sharp as life, was Daniel. He wasn't decayed or ghostly. He looked alive, younger even. That night, I confronted Mark one last time. He was sitting in the dark, laptop open, headphones in. I yanked them out and screamed, "What did you do?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the screen, where code still scrolled. Then, in that same quiet tone, he said, he just needed somewhere to go. The screen behind him flickered, showing a split-second reflection of both their faces, merging, overlapping. And then I heard it. Two voices speaking at once. "Passwords aren't just for devices, Avery, they're for people." I slammed the laptop shut and ran. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. Now, weeks later, I've changed everything. My name, my number, my life. But my new phone still unlocks with the same code. 0421. I never said it that way. Last night it buzzed at 4:21 a.m. A notification flashed on the lock screen. New paired device. Daniel's iPhone. And then, beneath it, another message appeared. One I didn't type. He's finally learned the new password. I was halfway through repainting the bedroom when I found the first nail hole. It was behind the dresser, a single rusted nail sticking out of the drywall like it had been hammered there for a reason. When I tugged it free, a small square of paper fell out from behind it. There was a word written in black marker, "Stay," all uppercase, uneven, like it had been written fast. I stood there staring at it, paintbrush dripping beside me. The handwriting looked familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. Only when I flipped the paper over did I notice the smudge of red ink, the same kind of marker my ex, Liam, always used to label his moving boxes. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to Liam in nearly 2 years. He wasn't violent, not at first, just possessive in ways that felt flattering, the kind of man who said, "I worry because I love you." But love had turned into surveillance, into rules, into the way he used to sit awake at night counting my steps across the apartment floor. I moved out while he was at work, changed numbers, burned his letters. I never went back, and yet here I was, standing in a new home 3 states away, holding a note that could only have come from him. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe the note had been there when I moved in. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. I stuffed it in the trash and kept painting. But the next morning, when I came back to the room, the note was taped to the mirror. Same spotty handwriting, same word, "Stay." The trash bin was empty. I started sleeping with the lights on. I told myself it was just anxiety, leftover habits from what he'd done to me. But then things started moving. Not disappearing, just shifting. The remote that lived on the coffee table was suddenly on the kitchen counter. The cereal box was turned label out. The closet door was open when I swore I'd closed it. Small, ordinary things. But that's how control starts. Quiet enough that you doubt yourself. 3 nights later, I woke to the smell of cigarettes. Liam never went anywhere without a cigarette between his fingers. I sat up in bed holding my breath and saw nothing but the soft yellow glow from the streetlight outside. The window was locked. The curtains didn't move, but the smell was real, thick and stale, clinging to the air. I didn't sleep after that. In the morning, I called the landlord, trying to sound casual. I told him about the smell, the noises, the door that creaked open by itself. He chuckled, said old houses settle, pipes shift, and people imagine things when they're alone. I hung up and sat there in the kitchen until I realized what was really bothering me. The fridge. There was a magnet on it that hadn't been there before. A cheap souvenir from a motel in Arizona. The exact one Liam and I had stayed in during our last trip together. The night I'd told him it was over. That night he'd said something I'd never forgotten. If you walk out, I'll always know where to find you. I stared at the magnet until my reflection blurred in the stainless steel. I didn't touch it. I just backed away. I started locking every door, every window, every cabinet. I wedged a chair under the doorknob before bed. But it didn't matter. The house wasn't fighting me. It was cooperating with him. A week later, I came home from work to find the paint roller still lying on the tarp in the bedroom. Except the wall I'd left half finished was done. Perfectly painted. The same color I'd used, same texture, same brush strokes. But scrawled faintly into the wet paint near the floor, barely visible unless the light hit it right, was one word again. Stay. I dropped the roller and ran. I spent the night in my car, parked at a gas station off the interstate. The headlights from passing trucks flickered through the windshield like flashbulbs. I must have dozed off at some point because when I woke up, there was condensation on the inside of the glass, and someone had written in it from the outside, I am. I drove until sunrise, until the gaslight came on, until the highway signs stopped looking familiar. I found a cheap roadside motel and checked in under a fake name. The woman at the counter didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and smiled the way people do when they sense a story they don't want to hear. The room smelled like bleach and dust. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle again, and sat on the bed listening to the hum of the air conditioner. I told myself he couldn't be here. He didn't know this town. He didn't know this place. But when I reached for my bag, there was something sitting on the nightstand that hadn't been there a minute ago. A lighter, silver, chipped skull, and beneath it, a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it, half expecting the same single word, stay. But this time it said in that same uneven handwriting, you left something behind. The air in the room felt wrong, heavy, too still. I didn't know what it meant, but the words burrowed straight into the part of me that still believed he was capable of anything. I threw the note in the trash and shoved the lighter into my pocket like proof I wasn't imagining things. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I had convinced myself to go back to the house. I needed to see if anything else had changed to make sure I wasn't losing my mind completely. The drive felt endless. Every few miles, I thought I saw his car in the mirror, that same faded blue sedan he used to drive. But it was always someone else. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the front door was standing open. My chest tightened. The chair I had wedged beneath the knob was gone. The locks were untouched. I stepped inside, whispering to myself that it had been the wind, that doors swell in old houses, that none of this meant what it looked like. The smell hit me first. That same stale cigarette smoke, thick and bitter. It clung to the air like a warning. Then I saw the living room. Every box I had stacked neatly in the corner before leaving was unpacked. My clothes hung on hangers. My dishes were washed and stacked. My shoes lined perfectly by the door. The house looked lived in, like we had moved in together again. And then I heard it. A low creak from the hallway. I turned slowly, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. The bedroom door was half closed. I could see the edge of the tarp I'd left from painting, pulled tight like someone had stepped on it. Liam? It slipped out before I could stop myself. Stupid, instinctive, the part of me that still thought saying his name might make him vanish. Nothing. Just another slow creak. I picked up the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, the paint roller handle, and pushed the door open. The room was empty, But the smell was stronger here, mixed with something faintly metallic. The curtains fluttered even though the window was closed. On the freshly painted wall, new letters had appeared beneath the pale blue surface, like something had been written into the paint while it was wet. "You forgot me." I backed away, whispering, "No, no, no," over and over. My heel hit the tarp and I tripped, landing hard. Something cracked behind me. I turned and saw the mirror, the one over the dresser, split straight down the center. For a second, both halves caught my reflection, two versions of me staring back, and in the left shard, just behind my shoulder, a man's silhouette stood in the doorway. When I spun around, the doorway was empty. I ran, out of the house, down the driveway, into the street. My lungs burned, my legs shaking. A neighbor came out onto their porch asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. All I could say was, "He's back." They called the police. 2 officers showed up, searched the house, found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing missing. I stood there while they talked in calm, practiced voices, using words like stress, grief, and psychological residue. One of them tried to smile and said maybe I needed rest. When they left, the house felt even quieter than before. I packed what I could in 2 duffel bags and got back in the car. I didn't have a plan, just distance. Hours later, I stopped at a rest area, trying to convince myself I was finally safe. I washed my face in the sink, stared at the stranger in the mirror, and when I came back to the car, there was a note wedged under the wiper. Same handwriting, same black marker. "Thank you for coming home." I tore it up, threw the pieces into the trash, but when I climbed in, something rattled under the seat. I reached down and pulled out a small metal lighter, the chipped silver skull, still warm. That was 2 months ago. I moved again. Different name, different apartment. I've never told anyone what really happened because there's nothing to prove it. But sometimes I wake up to the faint smell of smoke, like a cigarette just burned out. And every morning, before I touch anything, I check the walls. Because if I ever see another word written there, even one letter, I know I won't run this time. I'll stay. I always told myself I wouldn't live with another man again. Not after Derek. But when Owen asked me to come see the house he'd bought for us, I didn't say no. Maybe because I wanted to believe people could change. Maybe because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. Or maybe because I'd been alone too long and silence had started to sound like punishment. He picked me up on a Sunday morning. The drive took 2 hours out of the city, then another 20 minutes down a narrow 2-lane road that wound through pine trees and nothing else. When we finally pulled in, the house looked almost too perfect. Tall, white, and quiet, sitting in the middle of nowhere. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away, but Owen smiled like that was the best part. "It's peaceful," he said. "Just you and me." The house smelled new, drywall dust and lemon cleaner. He'd furnished everything himself. Oak floors, heavy curtains, a gray couch that looked like it had never been sat on. But something about it didn't feel right. It wasn't cozy, it was staged. Like I was walking through a photograph instead of a home. I told him it was beautiful. He looked at me too long before saying, "I knew you'd say that." That night I noticed the cameras, tiny black domes tucked into corners of the ceiling. Subtle, nearly invisible if you weren't looking. One in the kitchen, one in the hallway, another in the bedroom. He caught me staring at one and said, "They're just for security. You know how isolated this place is." He was right. There was no cell service, no internet, no nearby gas stations. Just that long road and the woods. The first few days were fine. We unpacked, cooked, and watched movies downloaded on his laptop. But I started noticing how he'd correct the smallest things. How I folded towels, which cabinet I used, which side of the bed I slept on. If I moved something, it was back in its original place the next morning. He kept calling it structure. He said every home needs order. I tried to convince myself it was harmless. But one night, I woke to footsteps in the hall. Slow, measured. He wasn't in bed. I waited, heart pounding, until they stopped outside the door. The handle didn't move, just silence. Then after a long minute, his voice, "Go back to sleep." It wasn't loud, just calm. The kind of calm that sounds wrong. In the morning, he acted like nothing happened. When I asked if he'd been up, he smiled. "You dream loud," he said. After that, I couldn't sleep well. Every creak in the house felt deliberate. I started making small plans to leave, memorizing where he kept his keys, where the driveway curved, how the forest lined up with the porch. But the problem was, I didn't have my phone. I'd lost signal on the drive-in, and he'd promised to set up service soon. He said it like he was talking about hanging curtains. The next week, he brought home groceries I hadn't asked for. All the exact brands I used to buy when we first started dating, even things I hadn't mentioned in years. I asked how he remembered, and he just said, "I pay attention." On Thursday, I went to do laundry and realized every single shirt in the closet was identical. Gray, soft cotton, my size. I checked the tags. New. All bought recently. I didn't own a single piece of clothing anymore that I had chosen. That night, I asked about the basement. It was the only door in the house that didn't open. No knob, just a blank white panel near the kitchen. He said it was for storage. "You don't need to go down there," he told me. "It's a mess." But I kept hearing him walk down those stairs at night. Sometimes I'd wake to the sound of something heavy being dragged. Other times I'd hear the faint hum of a generator or machinery. Every time I asked, he brushed it off. "Old pipes," or "You're just anxious." I told myself I'd wait until morning and check when he was gone, but I never got the chance. One night I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not next to me, above me. Slow, rhythmic breaths from the ceiling. I stared up and saw the faint outline of a vent I'd never noticed before. It wasn't there when we moved in. The next morning I climbed on a chair and peered inside. Empty, but I could smell him. His cologne, faint and stale, coming through the ductwork. Something inside me broke then. I started pretending, smiling when he asked me to, laughing when he corrected me. Because I realized I wasn't living with him, I was being rehearsed. Every part of my life was being replaced, refined, rebuilt to fit his version of me. That afternoon, while he was out, I checked the fuse box and noticed there were 2 switches labeled basement. Primary and basement, secondary. I flipped one off, expecting the lights to dim. Instead, I heard something deep in the house shut down with a heavy metallic click. When he came home, he looked pale. "Did you touch the power?" I told him no. He stared for a long time, then smiled again. "If you're lying, I'll know." That night, I didn't hear him walking. I didn't hear anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. And just before dawn, I woke up to a new sound. The basement door was open. I didn't remember hearing it, but the air told me before my eyes did. Cold and damp, it carried that same metallic scent I'd smelled once before, faint and bitter like wet iron. The hall lights were still on, stretching a pale line down to the open doorway. From where I stood, I could see just a few steps leading down before the rest disappeared into darkness. I wanted to call his name, but my throat wouldn't work. Every instinct screamed to lock myself in the bedroom and wait for morning. But another voice, quieter, older, said if I didn't look now, I'd never leave this house alive. I stepped closer. Each board under my feet groaned like it was warning me. I stopped at the threshold. The smell was stronger now, something sweet under the metal, something wrong. I took one more step and the temperature dropped hard enough that my breath fogged. The stairs creaked once, but it wasn't me. Something shifted below, slow and careful. "Owen?" My voice cracked in the dark. "What are you doing down there?" No answer. I should have turned around. I know that now. But I gripped the rail and started down. The wood was cold under my bare feet. There was no switch on the wall, only a faint blue glow coming from somewhere deep in the room. The farther I went, the more it felt like the air itself was closing in. When I reached the bottom, the sound hit me first. Soft, mechanical, rhythmic, a low hum, like an engine idling beneath the floor. The glow came from the far side of the basement, behind a plastic curtain that hung from the ceiling, the kind you see in meat lockers. I pushed through it, and the world went very still. The room beyond was small and windowless. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes labeled in neat handwriting. Living room, 3, kitchen, 5, bedroom, 9. Each box was sealed with black tape. A long metal table sat in the center. On it, neatly arranged, were things that used to belong to me. The ring I'd lost months ago, my favorite mug, the old camera I thought I'd left in storage. Every piece of my life laid out like evidence. And then I saw the monitors. 4 of them, bolted to the far wall. Each screen showed a different part of the house in real time. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway, and the bedroom. I watched myself on one, standing in front of the screens, frozen. For a second, I thought they were security feeds. But then I noticed something off. The me on the screen wasn't wearing what I was wearing. She was barefoot, her hair down, staring into a camera I couldn't see. She blinked once, then smiled, and then the hum stopped. Behind me, footsteps. He stepped through the plastic curtain, slow and calm, like this was all normal. His face looked different in the blue light, hollow, focused. "I told you not to come down here," he said. My chest tightened. "What is this, Owen?" He looked past me at the table, the boxes, the screens. "A reset," he said simply. "I built this place to fix what people break." He moved closer, and I could see the small remote in his hand. "You've been changing again," he said. "You don't smile like you used to. You sleep on the wrong side. You flinch when I touch you. So I saved what worked." He pointed at the screens. "You." Before the noise. I stepped back until I hit the metal table. The camera version of me tilted her head slightly, still smiling, and the sound came back. Faint mechanical clicks behind the walls, like hidden shutters opening and closing. I ran. I didn't think. Didn't look back. The stairs blurred as I climbed, hands slipping on the rail. Behind me I heard his voice, calm and too close. "You don't get to walk out this time. I built this house for you." I slammed the basement door and locked it, even though I knew it wouldn't hold. The lights flickered. Every vent in the ceiling started humming again, filling the rooms with that same metallic scent. The screens downstairs weren't the only ones. Tiny black lenses dotted the walls, the corners, even behind the framed pictures. Everywhere I looked, there I was. I grabbed my bag and keys, ran for the front door. It didn't open. The latch turned, but the frame wouldn't budge. He had reinforced it. I backed up, trying to find another way out, and that's when I saw the mirrors. Every single one had been replaced. Not glass, screens. And every reflection wasn't live. They showed yesterday. Me sitting at the table smiling. Me reaching for his hand. Me looking happy. The version of me I had been when I first moved in. The vents hissed louder and the air grew thick. My chest ached. My eyes watered. I ran to the window, tried to smash it with a chair. It cracked, but didn't break. The glass was layered, shatterproof. "Owen!" I screamed. "Let me out!" The basement door creaked again. His footsteps came slowly up the stairs. I pressed myself against the far wall, heart hammering. He stepped into view, calm as ever, holding something small and silver in his hand. A key. "I told you," he said softly. "I built this house for you." He pointed to the walls. "Every door knows your weight. Every window knows your breath. You don't leave until you remember who you were." I lunged for the kitchen, but the floor under me vibrated, metal plates shifting beneath the wood. My knees buckled. The walls around me pulsed once, then dimmed like the house itself was exhaling. When I turned, he was right behind me. His hand reached out, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw what was in his eyes. Not anger, not love, just ownership. I swung the chair as hard as I could. It connected with his shoulder. He stumbled, and I bolted for the garage door. It gave way with a screech, opening just enough for me to squeeze through. Cold air hit me like a slap. I ran barefoot down the driveway, gravel slicing into my feet. Behind me, the house lights flickered on one by one, windows glowing in sequence, like eyes tracking me as I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the tree line. I turned once, just to see if he was following. He wasn't. He stood at the top of the porch steps, calm, watching, and the house behind him breathed again. I don't live anywhere with cameras now. I rent small places, change addresses often, but sometimes when I wake in the middle of the night, I can feel that same air again, heavy and quiet like a house holding its breath. And once, months after I left, a real estate listing popped up online for a house outside Ridge Valley. It looked the same. Same porch, same tall windows. Only this time the listing said built by Owen and Associates. And below that, in the photos, a familiar woman stood smiling in the kitchen, wearing my clothes.